There are no embellishments, no heroes. The Serengeti is not a stage for fairy tales. It is a battlefield where each sunrise is a sentence, where every heartbeat is a gamble against the inevitable. Here, kings are not crowned, they are forged, in blood and broken by bone. Since the wind first swept across this golden vastness, great warriors have risen and fallen. Some have been remembered for generations. Others have dissolved into the dust of the savanna, forgotten like dry leaves carried by the storm. But among all the creatures that once marked this land, few left scars as deep as them. The killers. They were not princes born of legendary bloodlines. They were not born under auspicious stars. They had no legions awaiting their arrival. They didn't need any. Their claws spoke for them. Their fangs wrote their names into the flesh of their enemies. Their roars echoed like thunder from a war-torn skydot, and thus they became legends. They were born around 2004, probably two pairs of brothers. Separated by months, but united by the same fierce instinct. They grew up far from the gaze of scholars and the pomp of glorious lineages. No researcher paid them attention. No historian recorded their first steps. It was better that way. While other young males struggled to survive, on the fringes of glory, the killers learned a simple truth. In this world, hesitation means death. Life molded them into sharpened blades. Every scar on their skin's a memory, every wound a lesson. The first time they left their mark, it wasn't by hunting for food. It was by killing to eliminate. 3 lionesses were found dead at different points. Across the Serengeti, all wearing tracking collars. There were no signs of feeding, no struggles for territory. Only cold, swift, efficient deaths. The scholars from a distance began to whisper. Who were they? What coalition moved with such precision? Soon, the rumor turned into a name, the killers. Not because they sought fear, but because where they passed, life simply ceased. They did not negotiate alliances. They did not mark territory. With mere roars, they took, they broke, they erased. With every movement, they left behind trails of shredded bodies and dissolved clans. The earth, soaked in blood, told their story. The Serengeti would learn quickly. There was no mercy under the dark. Shadows of the killers. While the killers spread their name in the dust and blood of the eastern Serengeti, other lions were living. Their own stories of dominance and hope in the heart of the Joei swamps. 2 males reigned with authority and strength, Joei and Hiltor. Joei was an imposing sight. A wall of muscle crowned by a black mane so dense it seemed to absorb the sunlight. His eyes, cold and alert, watched every movement of the savanna like a seasoned general. At his side, Hiltor, more golden but equally fierce, walked with the confidence of one who knew he was king. Together, 8. They ruled over a small but thriving pride. For strong lionesses, cubs, hidden among the thickets, and a territory rich in life, everything seemed to conspire toward the perpetuation of their lineage. They were young, strong, and their roars dominated the landscape, like the voice of destiny itself. But in the Serengeti, eternity is a luxury no one can claim. August 2009 brought different winds, winds that carried the scent of death. The killers, now 5 years old, were ready. They had already exterminated entire prides. They had tasted the flesh of rivals. Now, their eyes turned westward, toward Joei, toward Seboi and Hiltor. They did not come to test strength. They did not come to negotiate. They came to destroy. At dawn, the first signs were visible. Hiltor was seen by researchers from the Serengeti Lion Project. His gait was hesitant, a shadow of the monarch he once was. Blood streamed from a deep wound in his hind leg. He limped through the tall grass, emitting low roars, not of challenge, but of pain. Nearby, the lionesses of his pride moved nervously, sensing the invisible threat. Not far away, Seboi positioned himself atop a hill, the silhouette of a king determined to protect what was his. But around him, danger was already closing in. 4 shadows emerged from the mist. They were not mere lions, or specters of death. Their muscular bodies moved with deadly synchronization, eyes locked on the target. They needed no signals, no words. The thirst for conquest guided them. The first killer attacked Seboi's flank, slashing his ribs with claws as sharp as blades. The second leaped onto his back, sinking teeth into his thick black mane. The third, coming from the side, tore in two his hind legs. The fourth, like a cruel spectator, waited, ready to strike if needed. Seboi fought. Oh, how he fought. His roars shattered the air, his fury shook the earth. But courage does not substitute for numbers, nor does blood replace strategy. The attack was brutal, coordinated, merciless. In less than a minute, Seboi was on the ground, his body marked like a parchment written with ancient pains. His proud dark mane now tinged with crimson. The killers withdrew, not out of mercy, not. Out of pity, they knew that true victory was not just about killing. It was about breaking hope. It was about leaving a king alive, broken, to witness the end of everything he loved. Seboi, half-conscious, would watch the horror that was about to unfold. Hiltor tried to muster strength to defend what remained of the pride, but his body betrayed his will. Every step was agony. His lionesses scattered, trying to protect their cubs hidden in the reeds. But for the killers, this was just an added challenge. They hunted like ancient gods, invading hiding places, dragging small bodies from the shadows. Every cub killed was a broken promise, a bloodline erased from the future. The killers' coalition did not seek merely territory. They sought extinction. In the weeks that followed, Seboi crawled through mud and cutting grass, dragging his wounded body like a warrior who refuses to fall. He hid from predatory eyes, licking wounds that would never truly heal. Hiltor, with what little strength he had left, tried to protect the surviving lionesses. But he knew his reign was over. The Joei swamps, once full of life, had become a silent mausoleum. The roars of the killers echoed like thunder at dawn, a reminder that, in this vast savanna, survival was a privilege reserved for the ruthless. And in that bloody August of 2009, no one doubted anymore. The killers were the true lords of the Serengeti. The fall of Seboi and Hiltor was only the beginning. For the killers, defeat of Joei's dominance was not an end in itself. It was just another step in their relentless march toward absolute supremacy. The Serengeti, vast and untamable, felt the weight of their steps. Where the killers walked, silence reigned. Where their roars echoed, herds scattered, hyenas retreated. And even elephants changed their paths. They moved westward, toward Mukamel, a fertile region crossed by rivers and swamps. There, a new opportunity for domination presented itself. The old leader Wallace, weakened by the recent loss of his brother William, struggled to maintain order among his females and cubs. But age weighs heavier than claws. Wallace and his coalition were vulnerable, and the killers did not forgive weakness. The attack was swift and merciless. No time for resistance, no chance for defense strategies. Wallace was driven out, and the few survivors scattered to the margins of the land that was now owned by the killers. But they did not stop there. They continued their expansion toward Kabumbu and the peripheral zones of Ndutu. Each new conquest was marked by scenes of horror. massacred cubs, subdued lionesses. Entire coalitions dissolved like leaves in the wind. The killer's savagery had no recent precedent. Craig Packer, one of the world's leading lion experts, observed the rise of this coalition with trained eyes and a sharp memory. Packer had witnessed decades earlier the emergence of the most feared coalition in history, the Seven Samurai. The Samurai 7 monsters with black manes, strong as buffaloes, cunning as serpents, ruled the northern Serengeti in the 1980s. In a single hunt, brought down 2 adult buffaloes and a calf, proving their absolute power. They reigned for 12 years, fathering hundreds of cubs and spreading their bloodline across the savanna. But there was a difference. The samurai ruled with sharp claws. Yes, but also with strategy. They allowed smaller coalitions to exist at the margins of their territories. They tolerated cubs from other males when their presence posed no direct threat. There was, as brutal as it seemed, an underlying order. With the killers, it was different. There was no order, no tolerance, no agreements. Where the samurai established dominion, the killers imposed extinction. Where the ancient masters allowed exceptions, the new lords erased every trace. The difference was not only in method, it was in spirit. The killers did not seek to perpetuate an empire. They sought to erase all competition as the seasons changed. As the rain shaped the mud and the sun cracked the earth, the killers turned the Serengeti into their personal execution field. With each step, they left behind a new tragedy. With each roar, they wrote a new line of terror into the chronicles of the savanna. Prides fled at the slightest sign of their presence. Hyenas, opportunistic by nature, learned to keep their distance. Even buffaloes, rarely intimidated by lions, avoided trails marked by the scent of the killers. Few dared challenge their reign. Fewer still survived to tell the tale. And so, among blood and dust, between the sweet smell of death and the scorching heat of the Serengeti winds, the killers solidified a legend that, even while they still lived, already surpassed reality. They did not merely conquer territories. They shaped fear itself, and the Serengeti, cruelly indifferent in its beauty, simply watched. For here in the land where there is no mercy, strength is the only law, and the killers were its purest and most merciless incarnation. In the savanna, no era lasts forever. Even the fiercest reign, the most uncontested dominance, is doomed to bow before the march of time. For the killers, the relentless masters of the Serengeti, that moment came, as silently as their rise had been thunderous. The first sign was not a roar, nor an epic battle. It was silence. One day, the researchers who monitored the edges of the conquered territories noticed something strange. There were no more signs of the killers, no new cub corpses, no abrupt herd displacements, no deep tracks in the mud along the riverbanks. It was as if the wind had erased their footprints. For months, the lands once marked by terror remained empty. Some prides cautiously began to return. New coalitions emerged from the shadows, young lions testing their luck where none dared tread before, and the mystery grew. What happened to the killers? No one knows for sure. Some isolated reports spoke of a brutal confrontation with a rival coalition emerging from the south, a battle between titans. 7 lions clashing in dust and fury, in blows of claws, fangs, and blood. A rare video, recorded in 2019, showed one of these titanic battles. Roars cut through by the dry sound of bodies colliding. Lions retreating and attacking like generals on a blood-stained battlefield. Some scholars, upon watching the footage, swore, "It's them. It's the killer's final fight." There was no definitive proof. Others theorized that nature itself, merciless as always, had exacted its price. Perhaps devastating diseases weakened the colossi. Perhaps internal fights destroyed the brotherhood that once made them invincible. Or maybe, simply, they had aged. And in the Serengeti, to grow old is to receive a death sentence. There is no retirement for kings with sharpened claws. The Serengeti, vast and indifferent, did not build tombs for them. There are no stone graves, or funeral chants for fallen lions. The only tribute the savanna offers is oblivion. But even oblivion struggles against certain presences. The killers, even in absence, left ghosts scattered across the land. There are places where elephants still avoid stepping, where lionesses nurse their cubs more hidden than ever before, where the mere sound of the wind over the tall grass seems to carry echoes of ancient roars. The females who survived the killers. Rain passed down their teachings: caution, vigilance, terror. The savanna itself, shaped by fear, was transformed. In reports and accounts, scholars mention the killers with an uncomfortable reverence. They were not heroes, nor wise rulers. Were the purest and most violent embodiment of natural selection, and because of this, they transcended the status of mere lions. They became myths, wild myths forged in flesh, fear, and the fire of extreme survival. When scholars speak of the 7 samurai, there is admiration. When they speak of the killers, there is a shiver, because the killers did not seek glory. They did not seek eternity. They only sought absolute domination. And, in a way, they succeeded. For a brief, furious, and unforgettable instant. They were the uncontested lords of the Serengeti. They erased ancient names. They ended entire bloodlines. They turned the savanna into an open-air execution ground. In the end, disappearing like dust. The killers taught nature one last lesson. There is no conquest without destruction. There is no reign without terror. And there is no memory without blood. Now, when the sun sets over the Serengeti and the sky burns with fire, some claim that if you listen closely, you can still hear their roars, mixed with the whisper of the wind. The killers are gone, but the fear they created still walks among the golden grass. And in a way, that is what it means to be immortal.